Welcome to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. We are coming to you from Atlanta. My name is Elder Avery, and you are?
My name is Levi.
And thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight we're going to be discussing worship, but more specifically, do we use wine or water when we worship? So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at the scriptures, and we are going to look as Israelites when we engage in any holy days, any holy convocation. Should we partake in wine or should we use water? So I think it's a very interesting topic because we all know how we grew up. Well, maybe not you, but I grew up, as a Christian, and you had this thing called communion, right? And you go on Sundays, usually it was the first Sunday of the month, and they would have this grape juice there, and everyone partake, and it was supposed to be symbolic of Jesus's blood. But we're going to look at all of that today, and get into it. So wine or worship? Wine or water when we worship?
Sounds exciting.
All right. The first thing I want to basically do, Levi, is I really want to distinguish our God. Our God, how is he different? So I want to start there. How is he different? He's unlike any other God. And I'm just going to give a few examples. I had a nephew, and every time he would pray, I loved how he used to always say that God of Israel, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, you are different. You are the God with the big G and not the little g.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to love when he said that. All the other gods are the little g's. Our God is the big G. When I think about the God of my fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, I think about his son, Jesus. He sacrificed his only begotten son. And in other cultures, they sacrificed their sons and daughters as well, but the difference is their sons and daughters had blemish. They were with sin. Jesus came with no sin, and he didn't come to the world, he came to Israel. The world has access only if they come through the gates of Israel.
A lot of people get that confused.
Mm-hmm. They do, absolutely. So if you want a relationship with my Father, who is King, then you must come through the gates of Israel, right? And we are the Israelites. So those are some of the things I think about in terms of the difference of our gods. I also think about God, our God, you can't see him, you can't touch him. Whereas other nations, when you look at their gods, they're gods of wood and stone, they're carved, you can put them in their pockets. They have, they might be this high, they might be that high. I remember just recently with the COVID-19 in parts of India where a lot of people were dying, and all of these gods they were throwing out. They were throwing them in the river. And in other words, protesting, hey, you're allowing all of us to die. Why can't you save us? It reminds me of that scripture when it says that, eyes, ears, and mouth have you, but you can't see, you can't hear, you can't speak. So I think about that as well.
And I've learned a lot about that in AP history or going to school and stuff, and they just have there's they have different I kind of want to use the word churches or shrines, places where they go to worship, and they'll have entire rows with just thousands of gods and their little statues, and it's just wow.
Right, exactly.
Name for every single one of them.
Thousands of gods. A long time ago, we used to have a newspaper. The Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries used to have a newspaper. I don't know if you remember. It was called The Message. And one of the things we would do is we would interview, other, philosophies. We would go and interview the Hindus and I think the Baha'i. And going to interview them, you would go into, sit down with them, and you would notice all of their statues that they had that represented their gods. And I think that stood out for me. But our God is so different, and he's one God. I like our God. I like the name, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Yes, it's three men. It's our founding fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he's wise in the sense that he wants you to call on his name, and he wants you to remember the faithful deeds of these three men. So I like that about him. And I hear other philosophies say he's three gods. He's the God the Father, the God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, which is foolishness to me. It's so much foolishness. Again, I think about our God. He's the creator. He wants us to focus on him being the creator, as opposed to the other pagan gods. They focus on the creation. They focus on the sun. They focus on the moon in terms of worshiping it. Okay, we acknowledge that there is a sun, and we know that the sun rises in the east, and we appreciate the sun, but we don't pray to the sun. We pray the one who created the sun. So these, I just wanted to start off with, some very significant things in terms of our God, and he's only one God. He is only one God. And it reminds me of the scripture, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." Let's take a look at that first scripture, Deuteronomy. We're going to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. And you can read it if you have it.
All right. Now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go to possess it, that thou mightest fear the Lord thy God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command thee, thou and thy son and thy son's sons, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged.
So stop right there. This God has given us commandments to prolong our life.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling us that you should keep it. Your sons and your sons' sons, your children and your children's children should keep these so that you can prolong your life. That's another thing I love about this God. He's a God that's concerned with life, the tree of life, right? Not death. All other gods are the gods that are concerned with death. So that's another thing I love about this God.
If you look at a lot of the, I think the word's polymonthific, I forget the word for it, but it's like
many.
The ones with many of gods,
right.
A lot of them will have a singular god that represents death. You have different gods, the god of the underworld or things like that. There's always a god that is there to represent death. Even if you look at Egyptian mythology, there was always a god to represent that type of death.
That's another great point. I had that in my notes here, but when you talk about mythology, just a little bit on that, you have all these cultures. You have the Egyptians, you have the Assyrians, you have the Greeks and the Romans, and they have all of these many gods, like you said, Levi. But in Israelite culture, there's only one God, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't find many gods. You don't have a God for the underworld. You don't have a God to mourn or God to call on for great harvest. We call on one God, the God that our elder introduced us to, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
It's simple and to the point.
It's simple and to the point.
He's the one who controls all of that. That's all a part of it.
Exactly. Verse 3.
Mm-hmm. Hear therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that ye may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord.
There it is. The Lord our God is one God. So it's very, very important to remember. Also want to turn to Exodus. Go to Exodus 20, and let's read verses 1 through 6. Exodus 20, verses 1 through 6.
All right, I got it.
Okay, if you got it, you can go ahead and read it.
And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, upon the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments.
So again, to reiterate the point, this God doesn't want us to have any graven images, whether it be crosses, whether it be ankhs, whether it be the little fish that you see on the back of the cars, and they say this fish is when Jesus came and blessed the fish and fed them. People worship these things. So our God, in all of his wisdom, wants us to focus on the creator and not the creation. So I love that about our God.
Mm-hmm. It says it right here, nothing underneath the water either, and they still have the fish.
Right. So when we, since you did bring up that, the mythology, I think about, on this particular topic of wine as opposed to water in our worship. I think about the other cultures, such as the Romans. The Romans had a god called Bacchus. He was the god of wine. He was the winemaker. He introduced the Romans to wine, right? And then you had the Greeks. It was so interesting. They have different names. Their god had different names, but they served the same purpose. So I think in Greek, the god name was, I think it was Dionysus. Same thing. He was the god of wine making. And so you had all these different gods in different cultures. They were the same god, actually, but they had different names. So Ashtoreth might be Mary, and Jesus might be Horus, and we said Bacchus and Dionysus, and so forth and so on. But what's so amazing to me is the culture. Our elder teaches us that culture plays such a significant role. And when you look at culture, it is an integral part of our daily life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of want to take a look at Genesis 17, verses 1 through 13. And I want to look at something interesting here that was very important in terms of when we as Israelites worship, right? One of the stipulations, one of many stipulations, but I want to just look at that one first. So turn to Genesis 17. You can read it, verses 1 through 13.
All right. And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after their journeys according to the commandment of the Lord.
Is that Genesis 17?
Oh, Genesis, sorry.
Genesis 17.
All right, I got it.
Okay.
And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me, and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kingdoms shall come out of thee. Kings shall come out of thee.
Mm-hmm.
And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, and their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee.
So one of the things that we see with our founding father Abraham is this agreement, this covenant. It's more stronger than an agreement. It's a covenant between our God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and Abraham, and this covenant. And we're going to see what this covenant is. Can you read 9, verse 9?
Mm-hmm. Verse 9. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant therefore, thou and thy seed after thee, in their generations. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised.
So every man-child shall be circumcised. This is one of the first covenants that we as Israelites must abide by. And it's very important in terms of the topic in which we are discussing tonight.
And verse 11. And ye shall be circumcised, the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations. He that is born in the house or brought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house and that is bought with thy money, must needs to be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant.
So I think the point here that I really want to make is the culture here is 8 days old. And culture plays such an important aspect in our lives, in every aspect of our lives. Even when we look at math, I use math because it says 8 days old. In other cultures, such as, in Chinese or Korean culture, when the child comes out of the womb, the child is already 1 year old. Can you imagine trying to circumcise a child on the 8th day being in the womb? See how important culture is here, right? And, even as they have their New Year's, if you're born closer to the New Year and you're born, you're 2 years old. So culture plays a part in terms of, something as simple as math. You would say, hey, it's just 1, 2, 3, right? No, it's just 8, right? No, it's based on the culture. Another experience is in the Khazarian religion of Judaism. They have 2 New Years. They have 2 New Years. Think about that. So when I think about that, so what is it? Maybe one of their New Years, they don't have all 4 seasons. And the second New Year, they don't have all the 4 seasons, right? When you look at our culture and our God, we have 12 months, we have 4 seasons in that whole New Year. So you're looking at the culture and you have an appreciation for the God of Israel. We have all of our seasons in our New Year, the 12 months for the 12 tribes.
And another thing about culture, one thing that I've noticed just going to school, a lot of people, it's like they don't really see the significance of how culture is, especially here in America. You have things like Christmas and Halloween going on daily, and a lot of people just think, oh, it's just for candy, or oh, it's just for the games and the toys, but like they don't really see the spiritual aspect behind that, which is something that happens here in Israel. Is it's not only do you are able to see that, the God of Israel sometimes will make a point to say you're doing this so and so and so, or showing why it's like important spiritually and how that helps you. Like just with doing Day of Atonement, you have to cleanse your body of all that sin that you've done in the past, so that you're prepared to go through that time of darkness,
Absolutely.
Or just Passover, there's certain preparations that you have to make so that you have that spirit of truth is able to come to you.
Absolutely. And so for me, I just appreciate our elder for coming with all the wisdom and knowledge to enrich us with this culture. Every day I go out, I say the pledge and I'm singing that song 6. And I look, being, I'm someone who is in the school, who works in the school system. I see how other children start their day. They start their day with a slab of pork between a biscuit, right? We start ours with the God of Israel, the pledge, and singing Psalms number 6. So culture, again, plays a big part, even when we talk about wine and worship. So I really wanted to get those 2 points across. Those 2 points being that our God is different, and giving you an example how he's different, but also our culture is so integral in terms of who we are, and even it plays a part in when we worship that we do not partake in wine. So the next scripture I want to go to is Matthew 26, and we're going to read 1 through 30. Okay, Matthew 26, and this scripture that many of the Christians use to justify using wine in their practice, what they call communion. And I guess communion is, it depends, I guess, on the shrine that they worship. It's every first Sunday. It's always on a Sunday. So now you start to think about that, right? It's Sunday, it's the worship of the sun god, and it's wine, right? And our God is different, as we saw in just a few examples, right? We don't worship on Sunday. We worship on the Sabbath day, right?
Sabbath.
We don't embrace the cross. We embrace the candlestick, all right? We don't have holidays. We have holy days. And the thing about holy days is there is a separation. If I can drink wine on the holy day and an unholy day, well, it really asks, what's the definition of a holy day?
Exactly.
What makes you holy then? Okay? But we're going to read Matthew 26, verses 1 through 30. And this is where Christians really get their basis of their reenactment, I guess, of the Passover. And they use wine in their worship. But let's take it slow and let's just read from the beginning, verse 1 to verse 30.
And it came to pass, when Jesus had finished all these things saying, he said unto his disciples, Ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified.
So the time here, we see Jesus. This is the time of the Passover. So we know what season it is, right? What season would it be?
Right now we're in spring.
We're in spring. How would we know that? We know because we're Israelites. Our elder taught us, right?
It's part of our culture.
It's part of our culture. So reading the scriptures, we automatically know that this is the spring, right? And it's not Nisan, right? It's not April. It's not March. It's what month?
Abib.
Abib. Okay?
And you can't, just going a little bit back to what he was talking about cultures, you can't separate culture from religion. Those things are tied together. So
Absolutely.
even if, I even think like a lot of people, they don't even realize if you're doing Christmas, you may not say you're a devout Christian, but you're still tied to that Christianity. You're still tied to that spirit without even realizing it.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point because they, when you get into, I don't want to get into politics, but it's a great example that you brought. So I'll jump into at least this point that they make. They always try to make a distinction between separation between church and state. Well, I hate to tell them the Israelites are the church, right? First and foremost. But as you said, I really do, to your point, I really do love the fact that you can't separate our culture from our spirituality. Yeah. Verse 3.
Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people.
So you have to look at our people. These are our people scheming, right? I think Elder Freddie made such a great point. He said, we are the people who killed him. He killed Jesus. And then we turn around and we worship him. I mean, that is a twisted people, man. Twisted. And what makes it so twisted is this indoctrination of the great whore, whom we call Christianity, right? She has many names, right? But since we are here in the West, Christianity. So I think that's a great point. We see as we're reading that this is the time of the Passover, and we have Israelites scheming against our brother Jesus. Continue to read.
Now, verse 6?
Yes.
Now when Jesus was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head, and he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much, and given to the poor. When Jesus understood, he said unto them, why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wherefore this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman hath done be told for a memorial of her.
Okay, so we see culture here when it talks about verse 12. And in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. So I like that, it's showing the culture of the people, right? Only, an Israelite woman would understand. She might not even understand fully why she's doing it, because Jesus is kind of letting them know that, hey, she's doing it for my burial, right? In which I'm sure the apostles really don't understand. What do you mean your burial, right? He's kind of leading them on. His hour is at hand. Verse 14, though.
Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests, and said unto them, what will ye give me, and I will deliver him unto you? And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover?
Okay, so we see that, typical Israelite behaving like a heathen, right? Selling out our brother Jesus, like as we said earlier, righteous, unblemished, the Son of God, right? Selling him out for money. And when I think about just our culture today, We do anything for money. We put on a skirt. Don't let me open up that can of worms, right? For money, right? We do anything. We get up. I mean, our little daughters, they do just anything in terms of money. So really nothing has changed.
And just speaking more on that topic, it kind of goes back to what you said about what Elder Freddie was talking about earlier. We tend to be our worst enemies. Just if you look at the civil rights movement and how powerful of an impact it had, it was so powerful that it was able to genuinely change something in this country. But that power weakened over time because you had people, being turned against each other, like the Black Panther movement. FBI, they sent people in there to turn each Black Panther against each other, causing it to break apart and just crumble. So we tend to be our own enemy, our worst enemy. Even now, I think we have to see all these different Black Lives Matter movements, and yes, they have a great message, but it doesn't seem really organized to me. And it feels like you still have a bunch of different people, all with different ideas and philosophies, and just not truly coming together to make a genuine change.
I think that's a great point. I think, as you said, all the movements that we had, I think about Nat Turner. His whole movement, again, it was one of his own people that turned him in. But I think the overarching reason why all of these movements failed, it was because we were under a false umbrella. And so for me, what I see for thousands of years, our God had his back turned on us, right? And then here comes Elder Shadrach. And then all of a sudden, our God, he turns. He turns to us for the first time because of the deeds of Elder Shadrach. And then the Supreme Council comes, establishes the Supreme Council, and then I can see God. At least I'm using my imagination, that's all. I see God leaning now. He's leaning, he's interested, right? Our job now is it may be wishful thinking. Some people may say it's foolish, but I think in this era, I see our job as to get our God to stand up and clap, because we are doing such a remarkable job in terms of exalting his name and telling the world and teaching the world who he is. So that's how I see it anyways right now.
So true, so true.
Go ahead. I think we're left off on verse number, is 18?
I believe so. Verse 18, and he said, "Go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, The master saith, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. Now when the even was come, he sat down with the 12. And as they did eat, he said, Verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me."
So here is the Passover. He's not eating it with the world. He doesn't have all nations among him. He has the 12. As Israelites, when we read this, we understand that 12 represents the 12 tribes of Israel. It's just like your ribs. You got 12 ribs. You don't have 7 on one side and 5 on the other, or 8 on one side, 4 on the other. And you say, this side represents one new year, and this side, I mean, it's foolishness, right? But anyways, it's the Passover, it's Israel, and this is our culture, so we should understand it as we read it, right? So continue to read.
Also, it's like, just from my takeaway, it's also also how like our culture is a lot of the times there may be like roadblocks, or like, because like you see they're asking Jesus, how are we going to set up the Passover? And he's just saying, go out to such a man in the city. And it's like how kind of like the Spirit is always there to help us. So even in just preparation with our culture, I can personally say for me, there's a lot of times where we may have roadblocks, like when we have to get to Canada, there may be things getting in the way of that, but somehow it always works out,
Right.
So it just shows you that tie between spirituality and culture. It's everywhere.
I think that's an excellent point. And the reason why I think it's an excellent point is because Elder Shadrach has come, and through his faithful deeds, he has helped us to rekindle and realign ourselves with the Spirit of truth, to help us to know what to do and to put that person in place. Where for so many centuries, where God of Israel had his back turned on us, we didn't have the Passover, we had communion. or we had Seder, right? We had Seder. We had all types of foolishness that didn't pertain to us. It wasn't that it was foolishness, but it was foolish to us, right? We're not down in the culture. We down it mostly because they try to take from our scriptures and they try to justify it from our scriptures. I'm saying they, meaning Christians and Judaism, Christianity and Judaism. So they take from our scriptures and they try to justify their own philosophies. So that's why. But keep on reading for me, please.
Verse 22. And they were exceeding sorrow, and began every one of them to say unto him, Lord, is it I? And he answered and said, He that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me.
Again, the culture, little tidbits of culture. If you're an Israelite, you've kept the Passover, you should see some of the culture, some of the things that we've engaged in. You can see it here in the scriptures. And that's one of the things I always appreciated about this great culture, this great doctrine, Israel, my teachers. Every time that I would read, I could see why we did what we did. Why do we do it on the 14th day at evening? Why do we do it on the 7th day? Why the new moon? And I could see it. And even in that little verse where they dip their hands in the dish, I see the culture. I see what we do. But keep reading.
The Son of Man goeth as it is written of him. But woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born. Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? And he said unto him, Thou hast said. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it, and brake it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, Take it, this is my body.
Stop there. Again, culture. It says he braked the bread, right? Or he broke the bread, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't cut it, he broke the bread. Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Keep reading. Keep reading. So we're on verse
27. And he took the cup and gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many of the remissions of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine, until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. And when they had sung an hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives.
So this fruit of the vine, I'm going to reiterate that. I just want to say, if you like what you're hearing, please give us some thumbs up, put some fire in the chat. Let us know how you feel.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, yes. I want to read something here. This is, again, what Christians use. Verse 29 says, But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. So they use that phrase, fruit of the vine, and they say, hey, we drink this wine, grape juice, whether it's fermented or unfermented. They use it in their communion. Seder is a Khazarian Jewish practice, right? Where they try to, reenact the Passover. And they have 5 cups of wine, 4 of which they consume during this holiday that they have, right? And one of the wines they leave for Elijah. What do you think about that? So they have 5 wines, 5 cups of wine. They drink it during their holiday. It's supposed to be a holiday, a day of worship for them. And they leave one of the cups of wines for Elijah.
Well, I don't see anywhere where it's telling me to leave a cup of wine for Elijah.
Absolutely, but you think when you read the fruit of the vine, people take that and they run with it and they say that, hey, the Passover cup had wine, right? Had grape juice or, wine in it. And so this is what they use in their worship.
And it's like, this is why I also kind of feel like to know the context, you got to make sure you're reading the entire Bible start to finish. Because you have to go all the way back to Exodus and truly understand what the importance of the Passover is. So that when you get to a part like this, it'll make more, you won't be saying, hey, this doesn't make sense, or getting confused. Because like for me, it's when people look at this and they immediately think wine, it tells me that you weren't really reading Exodus or Leviticus or understanding those laws.
Excellent point. And you segue right into my next point, which is Exodus 12. Let's understand the Passover, what it was, you know, the importance of it. We're going to read Exodus 12. Turn to Exodus 12. Let's see if what was in the cup was wine or was it water. Okay? Only an Israelite would know. Exodus 12. We're going to start with verse 1. Are we good on time? How much time do we have? Okay, all right. Verse 12. Sorry, chapter 12, verse 1.
You ready?
Yeah,
All
right.
right. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
So what month is that?
This is the month of Abib.
Abib, not Nisan, not March, not
January.
January, I should say, right?
Mhm.
But Abib, and only an Israelite would know. Continue to read.
Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house.
Did you see that, Levi? It says the 10th day of the month. It didn't say Monday, Sunday, Friday, right?
Mhm.
You know, communion is every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
The practice of Seder is every Friday, which tells you what? That they have to be operating from a calendar that's based on the sun god, right?
Mhm.
Where we use the calendar that's based on the moon, right? We understand when the new moon is. We would understand what the 10th day is. It's not Sunday, not Friday.
Just every Sunday. It says one day, the 10th day.
That's right.
One day of the
10th
month.
The
Not
10th day.
every, that's just craziness.
Verse 4.
And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make you count for the lamb.
Keep reading.
Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats.
So to me, again, you see the importance, the conciseness of the God of Israel, that it should not only be a lamb, but it should be a clean animal, but an unblemished lamb. So he is precise, he is exact, he's, precision you see here. Keep reading.
And ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening.
So again, it doesn't say Sunday or Friday evening. It says the 14th day, and that the 14th day could be any day, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be any of the,
How the moon moves.
based on, it starts with our new moon, of course, but it's the 14th day. Okay? Keep going.
Verse
7.
7. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorpost of the house, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in the night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with the bitter herbs they shall eat it.
So I want to stop there. Go back to the blood. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorposts of the houses wherein they shall eat it. So the blood, we see the importance of the blood. And pretty much all sacrifices, right? Why is it so important? It's because the life of the flesh is in the blood, right? When you think about the blood, you take the blood, you take the life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so read for me, please.
Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the pertinence thereof.
So when I first was a student coming into Israel and I read this, I was like, wow, the God of Israel likes his meat cooked just like I like my meat cooked, right? Or I like it like my father, right? Well done, right? So often you see on these cooking shows, you go out and you visit. I spent some time in school in Europe, and you go and you sit down for a meal and you're like, what is this? I want mine well done. Now I have to say, can you make it extra well done? And sometimes I say, can you burn it? Because it's raw.
Leaving pink stuff or like.
So anyways, continue to read.
And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. And that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on, your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. That also kind of makes me think about what we're saying about the culture and how it's specific and detailed and the purpose of it. Because if you really take the time to think about it, you have to have your clothes on, your shoes, everything ready to go, because he says it constant at times throughout the Bible. It's a memorial. You're supposed to remember this day. And so whether you are in a situation where you need to get out of where you're supposed to be or not, you're supposed to always remember it. So you're practicing it as a memorial, and that kind of shows you the purpose of it. Just there's always a weight behind it. It's not just for whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think that's a great point. That's a great point. Go ahead.
Verse 12.
Verse 12.
For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment.
So,
I am the Lord.
So in the beginning, when I talked about how God is different, that our God is the big G and they're the little g, and they have many gods, and we see it here. There's many gods, right? The gods of Egypt. Verse 13.
And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you, when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast of the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever.
Now, it's so funny when you talk about the word forever, because there's so many people who say, oh, that was Old Testament, we don't have to do that anymore. But no, forever is forever. If you won the lottery ticket and it was so, let's say, a huge number, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you received this money forever, you understand what forever means. But when the God of Israel says keep the Passover forever, all of a sudden it's Old Testament. You don't have to keep it anymore. You got this new dispensation and all this other foolishness. Forever is how long?
Forever. Until the end.
You know what I think of? I think of the two arrows on the number line in math that you see, those arrows, I ask my students sometimes, but you know what those arrows mean? That means that they go on for infinity and beyond. They go on forever, right? They never meet. So that's what it is, right? It's forever. That means my generation, your child's generation, generation. He wants you to remember what he did forever.
And it's like, when you're reading this is God. He's like on his soapbox. He is preaching. And you really think he's going to go back on what he just said? All the weight and power in that one verse. So now he's just going to, now I'm just going to change it. Like, no. This is forever. It's a memorial. It's a statue. And even Jesus is out here fulfilling it. So it's just ridiculous what you see going on today.
It is. But again, they don't have the eyes to see, and we should never take that for granted. Verse 15. I'm going to pick up because I want to speed up because I want to get to some of the other verses, okay? Verse 17, we're at? 15, I'm sorry. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread, even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whatsoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. We see the precision of our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No man of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only be made done to you. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for it is the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations, again for an ordinance forever. Talks about the month, in the first month, 14th day goes on, in the 7th day. So this is kind of the foundation of our Passover, right? And God of Israel is basically bringing in the covenant, the ordinances that we should keep forever. The takeaway that I really want our audience to take away with them is that this particular feast pertains to Israelites. So only an Israelite would know what's in the cup. Is it wine or is it water? I also want us to realize another takeaway is the blood. The blood is the life of the flesh. And we also need to know that those who partake must be circumcised. They're not strangers. When you go to a communion, if it's the first Sunday of the month, I could come out of the graveyard burying my Aunt Jenny and go straight to the communion and have a sip. And if it's, alcohol, I might have more than one sip. Right? And we see it's for forever. It's forever, right? And there's a distinction. As you read on, you see that the distinction is, hey, strangers can't be a part of this. So I love that. I want to put a question in the chat. How many Passovers did the children of Israel keep in the wilderness? Put the answer in the chat. How many Passovers did the children of Israel keep in the wilderness? Okay, let's turn to a different scripture now. Okay, wine or water. When I just think of some of the things about wine, you know, wine is man-made. You know, you think about wine, it's man-made, and it's a spirit. Sometimes you go past a package store and you see beer, wine, alcohol, spirits, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a spirit. If you're drinking a lot of wine or alcohol, right? You're drinking to the point of intoxication and you're driving and you're pulled over. The police officer may give you a breathalyzer test, and the breathalyzer test may determine that you're under the influence. So the police officer will give you a DUI, drinking under the influence of alcohol. You're not yourself. You don't have your faculties. So it's kind of obvious that the God of Israel wouldn't use wine. On the other hand, water is man-made.
Even how he says holy convocation. That's why, like, to understand what's going on, you have to be an Israelite to understand this book, because only an Israelite would understand. I am supposed to have no wine on a holy convocation.
Absolutely, because what makes it holy then? If I can drink wine on a holy convocation, I can drink an unholy. How do you determine what's the separation? Again, it brings up the issue of, or the definition of what is holy.
Imagine walking up into the greatest God on earth. You're walking up into his altar and you're drunk. Like, what is that? Like, that's the respect you're going to show to him?
And when you look at the world, the whole world is drunk. And when you look at the news and you see all of the ailments in the world, it is because the children of Israel hasn't taken their rightful place as the priesthood to the world, right? And doing your job, right? No, instead of leading, Jacobites have followed other nations. They have partaken in this communion or this seder. Even when you think about Hebrew Israelites, they partake in the wine as well. Everybody partakes in it. And it has so much history. When you look at Tibetan Buddhism, they have the wine in their worship. When you look at the shamans, the Shinto, Japanese religion, they also engage in the wine in worship. Christians, Judaism, Hebrew Israelites, everyone but the children of God. As I said earlier, he likes to do things differently, right? He wants us instead to use the water in terms of our worship. Because again, water is man-made. We know that the Spirit of God is magnified, with water. Any other things that you notice in terms of difference between water and wine?
Well, for one thing, like you already said, wine will open you up to spirits, but water doesn't. It can even heal you in some cases, or help, cleanse your body. If it's a hot day, you need to have water in your body to stay hydrated.
Yes.
Most of your body is made up of water.
That's a great point. That's the point I was going to bring. Your blood, plasma, 90 to 92% of your plasma is blood. We talked about what alcohol does when it enters the bloodstream. It intoxicates you. It brings on another spirit, right? You see some people when they drink wine, they laugh a lot. Some people when they drink a lot of wine, they talk a lot. Israelites, they drink wine, don't get me wrong, but we never use wine in the practice of worship in terms of consuming it. We never consumed it while we worship on a holy convocation on a holy day. This is not Israelite practice. This is pagan practice. And Israelites, we use water. Turn to Genesis 1. Genesis 1. Make the statement again is that the Spirit of the God of Israel is magnified with water. I'm going to start from verse 1. It says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." It's waters in the beginning, right?
Water.
Now, I got another question I want you to put in the chat. What do you think came first? Sun? Because Christians and many other pagans love the worship of sun and wine. So what do you think came first? The creation of the sun or the creation of the grape, which produces the wine? What do you think came first?
Good question.
Have any ideas?
Well, I mean...
you're cheating. You're looking. So it's interesting. I'll leave that for our audience So, but I'll give you the hint where it's at. Genesis 1. You tell me what came first, the grape or the sun. But remember that wine is man-made. Water is of the God of Israel. It only can be created by the God of Israel, which brings another interesting point. Man, he knows what water is made of. So it tells you two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen. But they don't have the energy, they don't have the capability, they don't have the knowledge to make water. So I thought that's, something fascinating. You know the ingredients, but you cannot produce it because you're not God.
A lot of those, like the natural elements, you know what's in it, but you cannot make it. You physically cannot do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think too, one of my experiences, one of those aha moments I had, just thinking, you get a bottle of water and you see an expiration date. I'm like, huh? Because water doesn't expire. It's actually the bottle that expires. The plastic bottle can expire and therefore produce some other type of chemical which can contaminate the water. So that's something interesting as well. When you look at wine and water, as wine ages, it's supposed to get better, but there's a plateau. There's a certain, depending on the wine, whether it's fine wine, white wine, not to get all in the wine, but it serves a plateaus. It's sort of the taste doesn't always get better with age. There is a plateau. Mm-hmm. Again, wine. God of Israel doesn't make wine. He made the grapes, and man takes those grapes. He makes wine, and some men, many men, use that wine in their worship. Okay, so I want to jump around for a bunch of scriptures right now. Let's turn to Numbers chapter 20. Numbers chapter 20. You also think about water, our own experiences. You think about our birth, right? We all came from our mother's wombs, and in that whole process, before we came through the canal, the waters burst, right? That's from a physical perspective. We look at baptism, it's the same thing. We have to go through the waters and we go forward, we don't go backwards, right? So I'm gonna turn to Numbers 20, if you find it. You can read it, verse 1.
All right. Verse 1. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the first month, and the people abode in Kadesh. And Miriam died there, and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation. And they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron.
So you have to understand, they are in the wilderness. I want you to reflect on the question I asked. How many Passovers did the Israelites keep in the wilderness? There's no water. And their people are murmuring against Moses and Aaron. Keep reading.
And the people chode with Moses and spake, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord? And why have ye brought up the congregation of the Lord until this wilderness, that we and our cattle should die here? And wherefore have ye made us to come out of Egypt, to bring us in unto this evil place? Is it not no place of seeds, or of figs, or of vines, or of pomegranates? Neither is there any water to drink?
Okay, so think about this now. I'm going to take my time with that verse. Verse 5, it says, And wherefore have ye made us to come up out of Egypt, to bring us into this evil place? These are a stiff-necked people, right?
Stiff-necked. Mm-hmm.
Why did God of Israel love these people? I don't know, but thank God he did. Because we'd be wiped off, right? We'd be wiped off the planet. It is no place of seed. There's no place to plant the seed, or figs, or vines.
Gotta have them vines.
Right? You're in the wilderness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now think about the question I asked. How many Passovers? Now think about where you are. No seed. You have to depend on the God of Israel. The God of Israel designed this. Why? Because for 400 years in Egypt, 430 years in Egypt, you knew all the gods of Egypt. You learned to depend on the gods and on the customs and on every which way of Israel. Now you have to be relearned. You have to learn to depend on the God of Israel. Put your faith in him. So I got to wean you off Egypt, right? I got to wean you there. And so everything now depends upon the God of Israel. But there's no vines. What do you use the vines for?
Wine.
You plant wine, among other things. There's no water, though. Read verse 6.
And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And they fell upon their faces, and the glory of the God appeared unto them. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take thy rod, and gather thou assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother. Speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. Thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so that thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink.
So notice, there isn't any vines for planting grapes. There isn't seed and figs. There is no water. But the God of Israel tells Moses to strike the rock, and out of the rock came water.
Amazing.
Again, you get to see the spirit of the God of Israel magnified with water, right?
It's so true, and it's just like it really shows you how forgetful we are for the people. Like, you saw what he can do with water. Like, that is his element, you know?
Right.
Like fire and water, you saw what he's capable of, and you really don't believe he can't do it here?
Right.
It's just really a sad thing to see.
And I often wonder, like, would I be in that situation? Were the children of Israel so spoiled? Well, did they know that if we murmured, like a baby, like a child, that mommy's gonna, take care, mommy's gonna come, daddy's gonna come? So were they that, spoiled? Were they that stiff-necked where you see all these great signs and great miracles and like, man, you should appreciate it?
I feel like it's like, because how it describes the land, was like a desert. It's barren. There's nothing here. So I feel like it was like a lot of fear going through their minds. And even despite seeing all these miracles, it was just that fear and doubt took over their minds.
I'd say more so doubt, because, you might be right, fear, Why fear, though? It's just, I think it's the patience, waiting on God. He said he's going to do it. He said that 400 years without parole, and then I'll judge that nation, and then there'll be great substance, right? He said it. And you see, he's exact about it. It's not 401 or 402. He's doing what he said, and he does it. And so it's a really, to me, it's probably a combination of a lot of things, but one definitely being patience and faith, believing in this God, faith. He's not going to allow us to come this far and leave us. That's what I think. Exodus 16. I'm going to speed up. Exodus 16. Good on time. Hopefully we're good on time here. I'm going to start in the interest because I really want to get into some of these other great scriptures. 16 verse 1 to 16. It says, and they took their journey from, is that right? Exodus 16. Okay, yeah, I'll read it. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, in the 15th day of the second month after the departing of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, and that I may prove them, whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, at even then ye shall know that the Lord had brought you out from the land of Egypt. It's a shame that he still has to rain miracles to let them know that I am the God that brought you out. I've done this. Now I got to rain manna from heaven. I struck the rock. Water came out. All the other great miracles that the children of Israel saw and witnessed, bear witness in the wilderness, and God of Israel, now will you believe? He's like pleading with them.
Open your eyes.
Open your eyes. And verse 7, in the morning that ye shall see the glory of the Lord, for he heareth your murmurs against the Lord. And what are we that ye murmur against us? And Moses said, this shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For that the Lord heareth your murmurs, which ye murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. You're not murmuring against me. You're murmuring against the God of Israel.
Makes me think about Samuel when he was talking to God, how the people of Israel, children of Israel, wanted a king, and he felt hurt. But God is like, it's not you that they're rejecting; they're rejecting me.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a really sad story because how many times they just refuse to open their eyes and see that the God of Israel has always been with them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's also the really important thing about being a part of this culture. And you already have stated it. We can't see our God. We can't see or touch him. But it's like you have to have faith in something that you can't see. And if you can learn to have that faith in that, that's going to be a strong connection you have with your God.
Absolutely, absolutely. I came to this first because I wanted you to see that they were in the wilderness. They didn't have vines for grapes. They didn't have water, but they didn't have bread. But manna came, and they took the manna, and that's how God fed them the bread, right? So they had bread, they had water, right? They had bread from heaven, and they had water, right?
He was providing for them.
All right, so let's go to Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, chapter 10. We're still kind of now showing you that water plays a significant role in terms of worship, in terms of magnifying, seeing the God of Israel, magnifying his power. 1 Corinthians, I'm going to read 10. I'm just going to read verses 1 through 4. And it says, moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized under Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat. And look, verse 4, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them. That rock was Christ. So we see the same spiritual drink. The Passover, it's a spiritual drink. It's a spiritual meat. But our fathers in the wilderness, here, you know, our brother Paul is telling us that it was baptism, how water played a part in our baptism, our freedom, if you will, right? And the meat in which we ate, which was unblemished, right? And the spiritual drink in which they drank.
You know, that was a great verse. You could just close the book, right?
I know, close it right from there, huh?
Fires and thumbs up in the chat, because that says it all. And let's think who Paul's constantly teaching. He's teaching the Gentiles. That's why it's like, to me, he's being more specific of what specifically is supposed to be drunk or what was in that cup, you know? But like, he has to be more detailed about it. But with us being Israel, it's something that is already a common knowledge. So that's why I think, you know, it's more descriptive in these parts than it was with when Jesus was talking to his disciples, because they already know what's in the cup.
They already know. They're partaking. It's not the first time. This is a tradition, a custom, a law, an ordinance forever that they would have known about it. Their fathers would have known about it. But I like how Paul puts the word spiritual drink, right? It's a spirit drink, but it's not wine, right? And we know what it is because he says from the rock, and that rock was Christ. And it was in the wilderness. And we know that the children of Israel could not have produced any grapes or figs or any seeds because they were in a barren land, as you said, right?
It's also how I just love how the New Testament always relates back to the Old Testament. And it just, every time you see a little nod back to Moses, it makes you like, I don't know, it pricks you in the heart, because it's like, it all just comes full circle. Even just, Revelations is really deep, and I'm not going to get into all that, but when there are parts in it where it's like, there are things that link it to Genesis or Exodus, and it's just an amazing, just full circle, you know? It's just what Jesus said. He's just fulfilling what was already said.
That's a very, very great point, because people think Jesus came and he did his own thing. He was only falling in line with the thousands of Israelites before him in keeping this very important day. Because as we saw it and we read it, it's an ordinance for how long?
Forever.
Forever. Let's turn to Deuteronomy 29. Deuteronomy 29. And this is Moses. He's given instructions to the children of Israel. And this is a very, very important. The next two verses that I read are going to be so very, very important.
Get some thumbs up in the chat.
Some fires in the chat. Again, how many Passovers did the children of Israel keep in the wilderness? Okay, I think this verse will kind of tell it all here. It says, these are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. So these are the covenants beside the ones he made in Horeb.
Mm-hmm.
And Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, he's calling the children of Israel, no other people, right? Ye have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh, and unto all his servants, unto all his land. The great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles. Yet the Lord hath not given you an heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear, unto this day. And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Now listen to this. Your clothes are not waxen old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxen old upon thy foot. Now verse 6, here it is. Ye have not eaten bread, neither have ye drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might know that I am the Lord thy God. Eating bread that is made by hands of man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for 40 years, you had no bread or wine. Meaning what? What does it mean? It means for those 40 Passovers that they kept, right?
Mm-hmm.
They definitely didn't have wine, as we're seeing here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No wine.
And they had bread, not bread that
Was
they made, their bread of heaven, which we call manna, right?
Which is also, it's just like, it's funny because it's like a kid's adult speaking to a child. Like a child's asking for new shoes, and your dad's like, "I always get you the cleanest outfits every day."
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So stop complaining because you already said.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. I think it's a great analogy because you think, and I always wonder why God of Israel, he referred to Abraham as a friend, and he referred to the children of Israel as children. And just like you said, I can see how the father and child relationship plays out. You haven't waxen old. Your shoes haven't failed you, but more importantly, you haven't made bread. I provided for you, in other words. You haven't drinking any wine. I provided water for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's put a stamp on this. Number 6. Number 6. All right, I'm going to read verse 1 through 8, okay? And it reads, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when either man or woman, notice it can be man or women, for those people who say that women can't do this, women can't do that, it can be man or women, right? Shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Lord. A Nazarite is a special Israelite, is made a vow unto the Lord. The Nazarite represents the law of the God of Israel, right? We know Samson was a Nazarite. We know John the Baptist was Nazarite, but we had thousands of Nazarites, and many of them were women as well as men, as we just read.
So true.
Right? Now let's look at the vow of the Nazarite. He shall separate himself from wine and strong drink, and shall drink no vinegar of wine or vinegar of strong drink, neither shall he drink any, what? Can you see that?
Any liquor, I'm pretty sure that says liquor of grapes.
Liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes or dried.
He's being so specific.
So
No
specific.
grapes.
But what do they have during communion?
They have wine.
They have wine.
Grapes.
They have grapes. Whether it's fermented or unfermented, it says this Nazarite cannot keep. Now let's stop there. You got Nazarites in the wilderness for 40 years keeping the Passover. They vowed the vow of a Nazarite. So how are they supposed to keep the Passover if it was indeed wine in the cup?
That's a great question. How would they?
How would they keep it? Was it wine? Let's continue to read. All the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree, from the kernels even unto the husk. So think about all your holy days, your holy convocations, your Sabbath and new moons, a Nazarite, which were many, which were men and women. They cannot drink of the vine, grapes, vinegar.
No loopholes here.
No loopholes here. All the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head until the days be fulfilled, in which he separate himself unto the Lord. He shall be holy. Notice, this, among other things, is which makes him holy. So think about all the things we just said. Those things make you unholy.
Think about the holy convocation. Like, that word holy, we cannot just throw that around, you know? When he's saying holy, this is what you do to be in that Holy Spirit, that holy place.
Absolutely.
So just like what you said, holy convocation. What do you think needs to be done to be holy? You have to get rid of the grapes, no fermented grapes, no regular grapes, no grapes of the vine, nothing.
Strong drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ye shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. All the days that he separate himself unto the Lord, he shall come at no dead body. Now I said you can come straight out of burying your Aunt Jenny and go straight to the communion and get a cup or two, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can sit down at the Seder and get your 4 cups and wait for Elijah to get his 5th. So, I mean, if you're a Nazarite, the Nazarites that were in the wilderness, this is the book of Numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Moses is breaking it down. You cannot drink any liquor of grapes, any vine, vinegar, any of that stuff. This is what's going to help keep you holy. It's going to help make your vow valid. So how could it have been wine then in the cup? How could it have been wine in the cup?
Especially just an important day of Passover. How can that be wine?
Cannot be wine. So as Israelites, we know this, and we thank our Father, the God of Israel, for choosing our Elder Shadrach, who came. He was so humble. He's one of the wisest men. He is the wisest man that I ever known. I've had many professors. I've had many professors, but none of them come close to the wisdom. I can't even use wisdom when I think of them. I might say smart, but not wisdom, of our Elder Shadrach, and bringing us this message and, teaching us, the importance of making sure that we fear our God, and we do this by keeping his laws and statutes. And I'm going to reiterate, for all these thousands of years, I could see the God of Israel sitting on his throne. His back is turned to us. Probably had his ears like this, He didn't even, well, he probably didn't even need to do that because no one knew the name. Then all of a sudden, Elder Shadrach comes, and the Spirit of truth comes and gives him the message. And then our Father turns around, and for the first time in a long time, Levi, he's listening to this, our elder, who's calling his name, the name that he gave Moses. Somebody has finally come. I can see our Father looking all throughout the earth, and here is Elder. And then Elder establishes, the Supreme Council. Teaches, of course, Elder Castrilli, and Elder Michael comes, and then the Supreme Council comes along, and then he's not only looking, he's leaning. He's leaning now. He's interested. And now we got branches in England and Northeast, New Jersey, New York, Atlanta, St. Louis, and of course our headquarters in Toronto. And we have voices. Have you been to our website lately? I've just gone through the music. And it is the catalog is so in depth in terms of the genre, in terms of the style. Mm-hmm. It is so, it's so rich, right? And you have this rich culture. And now, after all these years, our Father has something to listen to. Somebody is singing his praises. Somebody is singing it, whether they're singing it in calypso, whether it's soca, whether it's R&B, hip-hop, whether it's gospel. We're singing the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And he's listening now. And I really feel that we're at the time that it's just wishful thinking. It's my imagination. People, you might say, you can't get God to do anything. You might say, Elder Avery, you're talking nonsense. But I still would like to believe that we as Israelites now can come at this crucial time, and whatever your role is, how big or how small, if we can all do it to the best of our ability. It reminds me of the Day of Atonement when we're all, in the trenches, grinding, and we're calling on the God of Israel, even in our affliction. And we do it to the best that we can to our abilities. We can get our God to take a stand and clap for us. Mm-hmm. And in his clapping, who knows? Who knows what can happen?
Some fires, because Elder Avery is on fire right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to go to two more scriptures. I want to go to Matthew 22. Matthew 22. We're going to read verses 1 through 11. All right, and it says, "And Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said," I love how Jesus always speaks to them in parables, because you're in the midst of people. He knows the hearts of the people, all the people. And he knows that even though they're Israelites, their hearts isn't pure. As we saw in the wilderness, we got that same spirit. Oh, God, where are you? Why you lead us in the wilderness? Why didn't you lead us, in Egypt? Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? And so he's speaking in parables because he only wants to reach people like you. He only wants to reach people like Elder Shadrach, the worship. I love the worship in Toronto. He wants to reach those people. He wants to reach Hadassah in New Jersey. He wants to reach Micah in St. Louis. He wants to reach Jedidah or Sheree in the UK. He wants to reach Israelites. That's all I'm saying.
He wants to reach people who are going to hold on and really think about the words that he's saying.
Think about them. So he's speaking in parables. He's not giving it to, because you don't give your pearls to people who are just going to take it in the mud.
Also his wisdom, because you got to be careful about what you say.
Now we are going to turn to Luke 22. Luke 22, we're going to read verses 1 through 11. Luke 22. Okay, here we go. It says, "Now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover." So we are at Passover again. We are in the Second Testament, right? Some people call the New Testament. And so we are in the scene again. We're going to find out that indeed what was in the cup was water, not wine. We already proved that it could not have been wine. Now we're going to prove, we've already proved really that it was water, but we are going to put a stamp on it in these next two chapters that we're going to look at. So verse number 2, "And the chief priests and scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people." Fear can make you do all types of things. And again, when they say the chief priests and scribes, they're talking about Jacobites, right? Israel. They're talking about our people. They sought how to kill the Son of God who came to atone for the sins of them.
Crazy. It's just crazy.
"Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12. What's so interesting about that verse is because you hear some of these people, when they talk about Satan or Lucifer, they say, "Satan, get thee behind me." As if Satan is Satan is wise too. He's wise. But I say he's wise because he knows about the past. He knows when the Passover is. He entered Judas Iscariot, right? He had a role to play. But even in the role in which he played, he's playing into the hands of the God of Israel. Because the law of the Passover is that the priest must offer up a sacrifice. So even in your evil deed, God of Israel is magnified. "And he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. And they were glad and coveted to give him money. And he promised and sought opportunity to betray him unto them in the absence of the multitude." It's one of the things I really do appreciate about our leadership. The Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, beginning with our master teacher, Elder Shadrach, and the Supreme Council, they're not paid. They can't be influenced by money, right? One of the things that was so impressive to me when I first came is that they would not take my tithe unless I was baptized brethren. I was like, what? It was so impressive because everybody else is a crook. And it's so easy to stand out if you have a business or if you're trying to do something different. Is to do that. Be different. Do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. And so to me, that stood out. That they took no money, no salary.
For me personally, being a part of the Israelite nation, you're really getting to see where that money's going. Because I've been growing up here and, being in the center, like, I'm seeing us use the, remodel the center, adding new things. We're putting the money into different of our organizations and groups like Rise. And, like, I haven't been in Christianity, but, like, just looking at this, you got these huge mega churches.
Right.
That's where their money's going, to make these massive mega churches, make these rich, preachers and pastors, with private jets and airplanes. All of that's not really going back to better the people.
Right. Not going back to the people. It's a great point, because you see all of these, like I said, when you go into Jacobite community, 4 prevalent things. You got cigarettes, you got liquor, which is wine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cigarettes, liquor, lottery tickets, and you have shrines. They call black churches. Shrines that thrive in that community, but nothing else. Nothing else in terms of thriving, in terms of positivity, not much more. It's still the same old thing 400 years. For 400 years, it's been the same old thing. So that's something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But great point about where our money is going to, our tithing. It's going to rebuild the nation. Hopefully one day we can have a temple of our own that we built, and we can be proud of. And but I think if we keep serving this God of Israel, we'll be moving on into that direction.
So true.
Verse 5, and it says, and they were glad and coveted to give him money, and he promised and saw opportunity to betray him unto them in the absence of the multitude. Then came the day of unleavened bread, when the Passover must be killed. And he sent Peter and John, saying, go and prepare us the Passover, that we may eat. So Jesus is telling Peter and John to go prepare the Passover. Now listen what he says. And they said unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare? You can't just keep this Passover anywhere. You can't keep it in a graveyard. You can't keep it any day or any place. So a great question. Where do you want us to keep it? Because there has to be preparation. Mm-hmm. And he said unto them, behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entered in. And ye shall say unto the good man of the house, the master saith unto thee, where is the guest chamber, where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? Okay, so we see that what was in the pitcher, the writer felt it so important, felt it so necessary to say that what was in the pitcher was water. So again, I think I'll take a sip of water on that note.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
So water. So again, you see the wisdom of this, our teacher, Elder Shadrach, because he taught us this.
Opened our eyes to.
Open our eyes. I remember as a young Israelite, when I read this, when Elder Michael read this to me, I was like, man, I was amazed, because again, everything we do, when we are at the Passover, and you just think about all the things that happen, not Passover, but Passover too, but baptism. I was amazed that I could see it in the scriptures and I could understand it. And for all my years, I was ignorant. I went to the shrine every Sunday, every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Friday. No, seriously, all the hours that we spent. I think I came across statistics where Jacobites worship more than any other ethnic group. We calling on God. We worship more than, by far. It's not close margins. These are huge margins. We worship more than any other ethnic group, any other group in America, in the world, right? We worship more, but look at our results as a result of it. Mm-hmm. One of the things that struck me is like, man, you see how we are oppressed. I always wonder why God never heard our prayers. It's because we were praying in the fashion that the Gentiles taught us, with our hands clasped and our eyes closed and calling on Jesus as opposed to the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So here we see Jesus instructing his apostles to go prepare for the Passover, specific instructions, and there a man bearing a pitcher of water. So we're going to go to John 19. John 19. In this particular chapter that we're going to read in John, this is actually the offering up of Jesus. So we're going to read that. We're going to start at verse 23, and we're going to go to verse 34. Put some fire in the chats if you're feeling me, if you really believe that it's water that we should be using as children of Israel, as children of the truth, if you will. Water when we worship. Sure, as Israelites, we drank wine. Sure, as Israelites, vineyards was part of our culture, it's part of our psalms, it's part of our parables. Sure, but we don't consume it when we are engaged in holy activities. So you would never see me just on any day just with a glass of wine and just flipping through the books of Psalms while I'm drinking a glass of wine, because when we open this book, it's a spiritual book, right? And our elder has always taught us that the Bible isn't a spiritual book per se. It's a spiritual book in the hands of an Israelite. So as an Israelite, I have to understand, hey, this book, it's bread, it's bread. It's what we need. Again, it's a spiritual book in the hands of an Israelite.
So true.
So let's read. We're going to start verse 23. And we're going to go to 34. And it says, Then the soldiers, when they had crucified Jesus, took his garments and made 4 parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat was without seam, woven from the top throughout. They said therefore among themselves, Let us not rend it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, that the scriptures might be fulfilled, which says, They parted my raiment among them, for my vestures they did cast lots. These things therefore the soldiers did. So the scriptures are being fulfilled. If you go back and you read Psalms 22:18, they're fulfilling the scriptures even in their evil deeds. I always find amazing that even when you think you're going against the God of Israel, you're actually falling right in line to his plan.
How smart, huh?
Now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Cleophas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciples standing by, whom he loved, he said unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then says he to his disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour that disciple took her unto his own home. After this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scriptures might be fulfilled, said, I thirst. This is still the Passover. This is a very highly spiritual moment, right? It's a holy day. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar. Levi, do you remember what we said about vinegar in the vow of the Nazarite?
I don't think it's not supposed to have vinegar. It's not supposed to have vinegar.
Well, it's not that Jesus is a Nazarite, but we know that any fruit of the vine during holy activities is strictly forbidden. So now we see a vessel and it's full of vinegar, right? Let me read that again. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar and put it upon hyssop and put it in his mouth. So the soldiers took this vinegar, put it on a sponge, used a hyssop, put it to Jesus' mouth now, right? When Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, It is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. So you can see the spiritual reaction. You can almost see the spirit is like, I'm out of here, right? If this is a holy day, this is for me, I'm out of here. And he gave up the ghost, right?
It shows you what's happening when you have that vinegar.
Right.
So on our holy convocations, you want that spirit, that Holy Spirit within you. So by doing vinegar, anything of the vine, that's getting rid of it. That's making it
It's repelling. That's right.
repelling.
It's repelling the spirit. It says, the Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day. There it is. For that Sabbath was a high day, right? It's a it's a highly spiritual day. And it's vinegar on the Sabbath. It doesn't mix. It's like oil and water. It doesn't mix for Israelites.
It needs to be separate.
Grapes on the Sabbath, it doesn't mix, right?
No mix.
Wine on the Sabbath, it doesn't mix. Strong drink on the Sabbath, it doesn't mix for an Israelite. Now, if you're a Christian, if you're a Jewish person, a Judaism, great. Drink your wine, but please leave our scriptures out of it. It has nothing to do with Israelite culture, Israelite scripture, Israelite spirituality, right?
It's already saying right here that it's just not associated with any of that.
So let me read this again, wrap it up. It says, the Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. Then came the soldiers and brake the legs of the first and of the other which was crucified with them. So when you break the legs of someone suffering on the cross, you speed up the death. But the law of the Passover is what?
Can't break the bones.
Can't break the bones of the sacrifice. So let's see what happens. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. You see how I love this? It's right in line with what was established with Moses back in the First Testament, that Christians love to say is Old Testament no more. It marries so beautifully. Because now if they break Jesus' leg up, they break the law. That can't happen. So everything has its place. The vinegar has its place because the ghost just comes, right? You have to do this. Vinegar has to be there because the ghost has to leave. Why? Because if he's dead, he's going to break his leg. He's going to break the law of the Sabbath. So you got to see all of this playing.
Everything fits together.
Everything fits together. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out
blood and water.
Blood and water. Now you think about that. You just drank. You sent your disciples for the pitcher of water. You drank the water at the Passover, this high spiritual moment. You're on the cross. Vinegar enters you, okay? Your spirit's gone, but what's still in your sides or your stomach is that water, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just find it interesting how the writer, of course, when you pierce someone, blood is going to come out, but water too?
Water. Like, that's weird. Like, why is he specifically saying water?
So we want to thank you for joining us this evening. We want to also encourage you to join us every Friday at 7:30 p.m. as well as 2 o'clock on Saturdays, where you can fill your vessels with more of this message. I bid you peace. Peace.